Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So by now, you have probably seen the reports, considering it happened like 2 hours ago. I'm not breaking any news at this point, that Jacob Markstrom has been traded to the New Jersey Devils for a 2025 first-round pick that is top protected, as well as Kevin Ball. And the Flames are retaining around 31% of this salary, so it's only $4.1 million. The New Jersey Devils get their goaltender. Obviously, that was their pressing need. So I'm going to dive into more so the stats on this, the overall impact on both of these teams, the impact on the goalie market when looking at guys like Linus Ullmark, UC Soros, potential Jordan Binnington that also has 2 years left at $6 million. Because, yeah, this was the first domino to fall in the goalie market. When looking at it, I've talked about it before, the free agency market for goaltenders is utter dog shit for the most part at this point. It's a big three of Cam Talbot, who actually has starter experience. It was good last year, but is like 36 years old, even older than a Jacob Markstrom. But also the other two are like Anthony Stolarz and Laurent Brossoit, who are both amazing in backup roles, but have been backups for basically their entire career. They both had like over a .920 save percentage, but I don't think the New Jersey Devils were going to bring one of them in to be their legit starter. So there are going to have to be a lot of trades this offseason if teams want to get legit, proven, high-level goaltenders. There is none of those guys on the open market this season. So I think the New Jersey Devils realized that Ullmark and Soros might have ended up costing them that 10th overall pick. I think Soros honestly would be worth it, but instead they decided to lock up Jacob Markstrom instead of waiting around and potentially swinging and missing on a lot of guys and having to sign Talbot, Stolarz, and Brossoit and run a tandem with Jake Allen with that, which would not be that very inspiring. They decided to go out and get Jacob Markstrom. Now, when looking at this, I'm a little bit lower on Jacob Markstrom than some. I still think that he is a top 10 to 15 goalie in the entire NHL based on his overall play. But there's no denying that Jacob Markstrom is a pretty erratic goalie. He is a pretty volatile goalie. Here are his stats. He was actually pretty solid in Vancouver his 3 years as a starter, but his 4 years in Calgary have been kind of all over the map. His first season, he had like -9 goals saved above expected. Then that next year, he was a Vezina runner-up. I wouldn't have had him as a Vezina finalist, but he was still fantastic behind a very good Calgary team. Last year, very bad, 892, and then this year a 905, but actually did have fantastic underlying numbers. And here are the underlying numbers on Jacob Markstrom again. 2 years ago, very good. This year, very good. Last year, below average. And then 3 seasons ago, he was pretty goddamn bad. So when looking at a Jacob Markstrom, definitely an upgrade over Allen, over Akira Schmid. You weren't going to run that tandem out. And considering they got him at $4.1 million, I like this move for New Jersey. I like this move for New Jersey. I don't think that it's utter fleecing just because, again, just how erratic Jacob Markstrom is year over year. But when you look at the New Jersey Devils, last season, they were 5th to last in save percentage, tied for 5th to last, only ahead of the Ducks, Sharks, Flyers, and Ottawa Senators, so really not that impressive. It's pretty surprising that Vasilevsky was pretty bad last year as well, on top of having horrendous backup, the fact that they're tied with the New Jersey Devils. But when looking at the New Jersey Devils, I think they're going to be a playoff team next year, whether that's the 3rd Metro spot, 2nd Metro spot, maybe even jump a Carolina or New York. I'm not so sure, but I would say that they are, especially after this deal, most likely going to be a playoff team, at least in a wild card spot, at least neck and neck with my New York Islanders, who were the 3rd goddamn team in the Metro. The Metro is really not looking that tough next season, so I think that this is a solid deal. Do I love Soros do I love Markstrom as a fit? No, I would have preferred a guy like Soros and Ullmark, but I understand the price would have been too much. It's going to be interesting what the long-term plan is here because, again, Markstrom's 35 in January. It's not like he just turned 34, so when looking at it, you're probably going to get 2 more years of him as a starter, and then by then he's going to be your 1B, so I'm not sure. They might have to trade for another veteran guy in 2 years. So from a Devils perspective, it's very solid work. Jacob Markstrom should be able to provide them at least, even again, 905 goaltending would be a .009 increase on their thing. That'd be a massive upgrade for them considering what they got last year. But I'm not sure he's a legit top 10 guy that's going to massively upgrade them in terms of net. Now, when looking at the Calgary Flames, I really like this a decent amount for the Calgary Flames. I do think if there were a winner of this deal, it's a win-win deal for both teams. But I would say that the Calgary Flames more so, given the context, maybe directly in this trade, maybe you could say the Devils won it. But when looking at the Calgary Flames, looking at in the past year with a guy like Jacob Markstrom, coming off that season where he had an 892, he had 3 years left at $6 million. It was one of the worst contracts in the entire NHL. 3 years left, $6 million, below 900. One of the worst starters in the entire NHL that season. So the fact you fast forward a year from now and they're able to get a first-round pick, and when looking at the Calgary Flames pick situation, this is without the New Jersey Devils pick added in 2025. They have a first-round pick in every single one of the next 3 drafts, as well as 2 seconds this year, as well as 2 thirds in 2024 and 2026. They did a very solid job with Craig Conroy. I think he really knocked it out of the park with the Lindholm, and I'd honestly say this was a very good deal for him as well. Didn't love the Tanev or Hanifin trades too much, or Zadorov, but when looking at the Calgary Flames over the past year, the way that they've been able to accumulate assets for aging guys, and especially given Markstrom's situation with his contract, it was a pretty big contract and 34 years old, I think this was a very solid deal by the Calgary Flames. Maybe Kevin Ball can even turn into something going down the line. And when looking at the salary retention, I understand that people thought maybe they should get a little bit more considering their retain, but I think they did. I think if they traded Jacob Markstrom at $6 million, I think that probably would have only got him a second-round pick, considering $6 million in today's market. He was like the 6th or 7th highest paid goalie in the entire NHL. So when looking at the retention, it's not a big deal for the Calgary Flames. They really don't have any free agents of note, and this is with Markstrom's cap hit on the books. So they have $26 million. They'll have roughly 24 once you add in the retention in cap space this summer. They don't really have any notable free agents, and going forward, they're clearly rebuilding. They're clearly heavily retooling. It's not like they need that $1.9 million in salary cap space. So I like the fact that they did retain some money on Jacob Markstrom if it was the difference between a second and a first round pick. They were never getting the 10th overall pick for Jacob Markstrom. I don't know why people are like starting to act like that, saying like, I really thought they were going to move up from like their 20, even moving up from their 26th to 10th overall, I thought was very unrealistic for Jacob Markstrom. So when looking at it, I think the Calgary Flames did a solid job, and just overall, the way that their future has done kind of a full 180. Looking at the end of last season, Huberdeau absolutely flops for them. They end up missing the playoffs, to now fully committing to a rebuild retool. I'm very encouraged for the Calgary Flames going forward. Now, when looking at the goalie market going forward, I think if you are a Nashville Predators or Boston Bruins fans, you need to be pretty excited based on what the Jacob Markstrom return was, considering the fact that those guys are even making even less than Markstrom pre-retention. Markstrom was making $6 million. Ullmark and Saros are only at $5 million. They're obviously much younger and far more consistent season over season. Even though Saros did have a bit of a down year, the guy had above like a 9.18 the prior 3 seasons. So when looking at this, I think that there's going to be a pretty big ransom for a UC Saros based on this return. He does only have 1 year left versus Markstrom having 2 years left. But again, 28 years old versus 34 years old. So I think the price for Saros is going to be around the mid-first round pick on top of a high-level prospect, or maybe just a roster player in a first-round pick. It's very interesting to see with UC Saros what kind of the path would be. Because if they're going to trade him, I think you got to kind of admit that you're rebuilding, retooling. I still don't think that they're probably going to trade him, if I'm being honest, considering they were so highly competitive this offseason, but also they did end up dumping Ryan McDonough, even though he apparently wanted to trade. So it's going to be very interesting with Saros. With Ullmark, again, it's a different story than, say, with the Jacob Markstrom trade, considering the Calgary Flames obviously wanted a pick compared to, say, a roster player. They didn't do this fucking trade for Kevin Ball. That's not the core piece of this trade. It's obviously the pick. But when looking at the Boston Bruins with Linus Ullmark, I think it's perfectly reasonable to think that they're going to get a solid top 6 forward or top 4 defenseman for Linus Ullmark. I think that is the price for Linus Ullmark. I think that has always been the price for Linus Ullmark, considering the fact that now one of the top contenders for a goaltender is off the market. Other teams might start panicking and might pull the trigger on a Linus Ullmark deal relatively soon. I could see him getting traded before the draft. It's going to be very interesting to watch, considering the fact maybe a Jordan Binnington now ends up getting traded at 33% retained, similarly to a Jacob Markstrom. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the goalie market going forward. But again, overall, this deal for the New Jersey Devils, thumbs up. It gets a thumbs up from me. Not the perfect deal, but again, I think it was maybe a little bit unrealistic for them to trade for a Saros or an Ullmark. So considering they did acquire the 3rd best goalie on the market at a pretty reasonable price, I don't understand why everybody's acting like this is going to be a guaranteed late first round pick. Like everybody's saying it's going to be like the 25th pick and beyond. Why are we penciling in the Devils to be a goddamn playoff team? Especially when you consider the Devils weren't even like that exceptional this year in terms of their expected goals percentage. And as well, they gave up a shit ton of high danger chances, but this is supposed to be the closeout of the video. The Devils definitely improve their goaltending. There's other areas for them to improve in terms of their defensive structure, hoping that Sheldon Keefe can obviously bring that. But overall, solid deal for both parties. I really like the way that the Calgary Flames are trending compared to last year. I was very, very low on them, shitting on them nonstop. They have a very bright future, and the New Jersey Devils should most likely be yet again back in the playoffs. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this trade? What would you give in terms of grades? I'll flash mine right now, but if I forget, I ended up giving the Calgary Flames an A-, the New Jersey Devils a B, a very solid win-win deal. I don't really understand the logic behind this being a fleece considering how inconsistent Markstrom is, but yeah, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? And I'll be seeing you in the next one.